All right.
This was just a standard 2-5 game at
Okay.
TCH Dallas, so it's
Okay.
matched the stack.
So 2-5 TCH in Dallas match a stack. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm in the small blind. I
Okay.
have roughly 3,500 in my stack.
Okay.
The villain in this hand covers me.
Okay.
So there's one limp,
Okay.
and then middle position raises it to 25.
No straddles or anything, by the way.
No, no straddle on this hand. There typically is in this game,
Mm.
but it just depends on the table you're at, really.
So one limper, MP to 25. Okay.
Middle position raises to 25.
Mm-hmm.
The button calls.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm in the small blind. I look down at King of Clubs and King of Hearts.
Okay.
Suits are relevant in here.
Okay.
And I three bet to 115.
Okay.
And I made it kind of smaller because the middle position who raised, I've played with him several hours. Um, he plays pretty tight. He likes to limp a lot. And so
Mm-hmm.
when he raised, that kind of gave me some red flags.
And he raised
So
over a
I
limper
kind of,
too, right?
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to play a huge pot out of position with him in case he was really strong. I also play quite often with the button, and I know he likes to be a little loose aggressive. So if I do flop big, I know him and I are going to get in some battles. So anyway, I make it 115.
Okay.
The original razor actually folds, and the button calls.
So limper folds, the MP folds, and the button calls. So that's a double flat, and you're 3,500 effective, right? So limp, raise to 25 call. You make it 115, button calls. Sounds to me like this guy can probably be a little bit on the wider side, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So if you're thinking about when you're playing deep stack here, and I do remember I liked your call, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But this is a common question that I'll get when people, they get a little bit, the terms like GTO and things like that are thrown around and they get a little bit confused about, bet sizing and what is a range advantage, what is a nut advantage, things like that. The theory goes, if you want, it's a pretty simple theory, is that if a board comes out where your opponent can have the nuts and you can't, like say for example, the board came out 5-6-7 or 4-5-6 or something like that, right? Where you're not going to be three betting 7-8, for example. Now maybe you would, but I'm just giving an example. Then your sizing should be reflected smaller on the flop or whenever maybe a straight comes in or a flush comes in because your opponent's going to have more of that super sort of nutted hand based upon the pre-flop configuration. Now, a lot of times you're going to have range advantages on boards, but when the entire board runs out or on turns and things like that, especially brings in a lot of two pair of straights that you might not have three betting the blinds. That's the theory of it. So it looks like it's 265, right, to the flop?
Yeah.
Okay.
Flop comes King of Diamonds,
Mm-hmm.
Five of Diamonds, Nine of Spades.
Well, you've got a nut advantage and you got the nuts right now, right? Top set?
Yeah, top set.
Yep.
Obviously, relatively connected board with diamonds out there, but not a ton of straight draws. I mean, obviously,
Brought some Broadway straight
couple
draws.
gut shots.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I see bet 85.
All right, so hero bets 85. By the way, this would be a board here where you most likely would be allowed to bet on the larger side, going for that theory because of your range and nut advantage here in this particular situation where, and also too, there aren't really two pair that should be all that prevalent. It's great when there's a board that's got a high card where you're represented with top set. There is no straight out there, and there really shouldn't be any two pair. Those are the boards that you can go large as the C better. So you could bet large. Obviously, you are blocking a lot of sort of the calling hands in a given situation because you obviously have three kings, and maybe you would take that with three nines or something like that, or ace king. But the hand is still even theoretically a little bit off the rails just because the pure double flat. I still might bet larger here, Kevin, not Kevin Rand, because of the fact that I still would expect to get called by those Broadway gut shots. Like if you wanted to say, well, I can bet 85 and get called by Queen Jack and Jack 10, but if I go to like 200 or 175, I won't. I don't from what I've seen playing in Texas and from on the live streams, I don't really see that. If a guy's going to double flat with an offsuit Broadway, he's still going to peel with 175 to 200 on King 5-9.
Yeah, I agree. I think if it was a little more connected, like you said, if it was like um, king with two diamonds out there and maybe like 7-8, then I probably would see bet a little bit bigger. Um, just because there's more obvious straight draws, there are two pair combos, stuff like that, that I can get a lot more value from. Having top set, I was just kind of thinking, unless he has specifically diamonds, what am I really getting value from? But so then,
Broadway gut shots.
yeah.
Somebody in
So
the live chat says
ultimately,
that because you have top set, does that mean that checking here is okay? Yeah, if you want to have some balance where you have really strong hands where you check, then the good candidates to do that obviously are top set. I don't do it all that much, but they're that's definitely a thing. So you bet 85,
yeah,
okay?
I didn't think about checking here only because I didn't want to give a free card to a gut shot or a diamond draw. I thought it was obviously. I think diamond draw is probably bet at it,
The other thing too about
but
checking a board that you're expected to bet is that you don't see a very high frequency, I don't think, of people stabbing, especially if they're going to stab across multiple streets. Like, it would be one thing if this guy had pocket nines and it came out 90s 3 and he checked. But I mean, how often is the preflop three better check folding king 5-9 here? So I think that tends to pull back on the frequency of people stabbing. So yeah, you end up just giving free cards, not necessarily to protect your stack, but you're just losing some value on the bets that you would get called. So you bet 85, okay.
yeah, and then button raises to 225.
Button raises to 225. Okay, that's really really interesting, and this is one where it is very tough to balance in your spot because when you really look at it, normally when somebody raises, there's a lot going on here. What I'm going to say is that it's tough to balance a bet three bet range here because obviously you want to sort of bet three bet very strong hands here, like you've got the nuts, right? And usually another sort of old school CLP thing, aggressive action theorem, states that when someone raises post, they're not going to fold. That is even more extreme in a three bet pot. You will see some raise folds from people like in single raise pots, but it's really rare that someone's going to raise here and then fold. Plus, you block all the kings, which would probably sort of lean him towards combo draws. Now, why I say this is hard to balance is because you have really, really clear bet three bets for value here with two specific hands, right? Pocket kings and pocket nines. I mean, kings and nines are pretty much the same thing here when the guy just flats. So someone say, well, how would you balance that? Well, you would probably balance with like some of your best combo type of draws. It's king of diamonds, five of diamonds, nine of spades. So like a queen, jack of diamonds, jack 10 of diamonds. But the problem here, though, with doing that is what I just said. If someone's raising and never folding, why would you bet three bet a combo draw? What would be the point?
Yeah, and I thought about it for a minute. I thought about sizing. I could three bet, click back. I thought pocket nines are definitely in a double flat range. Pocket fives, not so much. But because pocket nines definitely are, I did just pretty much basically min clicked it back to 550.
So here at a 550. I mean, the only thing that I would say about this is that you absolutely need to be very aware of what he has here or what his range is, which basically is going to be diamonds are bad for you, right? Broadway cards are bad for you, but it's a little bit of a guessing game if it's a 10, a jack, or a queen here. I don't know if you had thought about how that would be reflected, if you see an offsuit jack or an offsuit 10 or something like that. What I would say, though, is that if I was going to bet three bet, especially at the stacked up, I would have gone larger. I probably would have made it 800 if he calls. Now the pot's 16 and you guys have like 23, and then you can easily get the money. And here you obviously price him in with everything. If he does call, the pot's like 13 and you've got like still 3,000 left. So then you're talking about like almost like full pot size bets, get a ton of money in. And if you skew towards draws, if he misses at the end, you're not going to get that value on the river too. So that's why if I did choose to bet three bet here, which I probably would do a fair amount, even though it might be very unbalanced, I would tend to go on the larger side. That's my thought here.
Yeah, I didn't like my sizing looking back on it. I thought in the moment, if he did have a set, I was just ready to get it all in, in a 4 bet, 5 bet situation, if that was the case. But he just tanked for about, 45 seconds to a minute and then called.
I mean, the villain would have to be really bad, I think, to put in another bet here with the set, or think that you are really bad, like if you were going to get in with aces or kings or something like that. But so button
Yeah,
calls.
I think based on my image, he could definitely think a set here is good a lot of the time.
Yeah, but in order for him to jam a set like fives or nines, you have to call off too. Now, are you bet three betting calling off with ace king or aces here at 3,500 deep?
Yeah, probably not.
I mean, that's what I would think if you were a villain. Okay, so he calls, so the pot's 1365, right? If I'm doing the math right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Turn is the queen of spades.
Okay, so here's one of these sticky ones in the sense that obviously it doesn't have to bring him in a straight, but it could bring him in a straight. Um, he can also have some 9x diamond draws here too. But I do tend to think that those are more called than raised. Uh, so I really think it's like leaning towards queen jack, queen 10, jack 10. And of course, there's more of that queen X pairs type of thing here. So what was your thinking here on this turn?
Yeah, so obviously I did think about Jack 10 in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
specifically Jack 10 of diamonds, maybe Jack 10 of spades, but I think to call the 3 bet Jack 10 of spades was a little less likely. With that being said, Jack 10 of diamonds kind of stuck out to me. I still thought I could get some value from diamond draws, so I bet out 800.
Yeah, I mean, just combos wise, you still have the best hand here a ton, right? If it is just Jack 10 of diamonds, that's only one combo. If he was raising Jack 10 of spades here, which again, I still think would tend to sort of just be a call and then maybe bet when checked to, he would be priced in to your 3 bet because you did make it, so small. But I probably wouldn't be, giving a free card here, um, you know, f- for that reason. So you bet 800. Okay.
And he pretty quickly calls.
Okay. So button calls again. And what I would say here in theory is that the button can just call with Jack 10 of diamonds here on turn because he's blocking a lot of the action card killers, plus having diamonds where if you ever found yourself with Jack 10 that didn't have diamonds here on the turn, those are the ones that are supposed to be raised off. And again, sort of from a theoretical perspective. With that being said, if I was your opponent, I would just be doing a lot of raising with all my nut hands here because it doesn't look like you're ever folding because you bet 3 bet, and you have to, and you probably have a pocket kings or nines from kind of what it looks like. But you bet 800 and you call, so now the pot is 3,065, and it looks like you guys have what 2,000 left.
Yeah, right around 2000, maybe just north of it.
Okay.
Um, Obviously, the pot is super bloated at this point
Mm-hmm.
and don't even have a full pot size bet.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think about your sizing here on the turn. So you sort of went like 60%. I mean, you can never really just fold because people do stupid shit. So I'm wondering if you want to just bet larger too, a little bit on the turn, 1,000, 1,100, something like that, just to be able to get all the money in against some of the good hands. And also too, like if you picked up like, a pair plus straight draw, flush draw, you're getting more value. Again, it's all about getting value early on. So I think on paper here, maybe I still go to like 1,100. And then if he calls the pot's like 35, and now you've got half a pot size bet left. So I might still size up here. I would size up with the bet 3 bet if I did on the flop, and then size up here on turn. But okay, so let's go to the river.
River is an ace of spades, which is obviously not the best card, but not the worst card either.
Okay, so the turn was the queen of spades, which brought the back door. We'll have to visualize this for people on the podcast. So king of diamonds, 5 of diamonds, 9 of spades. Turns the queen of spades. Hero has king, king with no king of spades. So it's possible somebody could have king X of spades. Now, what would that have to be with what's out there? It can't be ace, king of spades because the ace of spades comes at the end. So it can't be king, queen of spades because the queen of spades is on the turn. So it would literally have to be king, jack of spades or king 10 of spades. So the only other thing is that if the spades somehow brought in some sort of straight draw that he was hanging around with, Broadway straight draw on the flop, but that's also not possible. I mean, it's possible Jack 10 of spades, but he would have had it on the turn anyways. But he can't have Queen Jack or Queen 10 of spades because the Queen of spades came on the turn. So my point is that I don't think it actually changes anything. If he had Jack 10, he's got Jack 10 anyways.
That was kind of my thinking too. I thought, you know, King Jack of spades is really the only hand I thought he might be able to have, with the backdoor straight draw on the flop and backdoor spades. But I still think, most people won't raise King Jack just because they are outpipped so many times or so often.
I mean, I think we can almost always agree that, I mean, King Jack of spades, like the one combo, that's going to be called like 80% of the time. So when you get here towards the end, it's a very small portion, right, of his.
Exactly.
I mean, unless he was doing something with like 5, 6 of spades on the flop and you three bet so small. But again, the frequency of that happening is just almost nil here.
Yeah, and like you said, if he had Jack 10 on the turn, well, obviously he already got there on the turn, and so the river didn't really change much for him there. But so anyway, I checked.
So why did you check here?
Um, that's a great question. I think obviously my only sizing is all in,
Okay.
and I really think that if he has missed diamonds, he's not calling. And he might even, because it was the ace, like, and I three bet on the flop, I could have aces here, and he might, fold a set. I think like me checking in the spot obviously allows him to jam as a bluff, but also he might overvalue one of his own sets. So that was my only thinking too.
Well, all right. So here's the thing. So I don't know if you heard the last call or the first call with Mike, because this is a very interesting one at the end, and I'll go back to the two primary reasons to check the river here, because this one where you had said, well, could he value own himself? And I saw somebody was looking down at the chat say ace nine of diamonds, which would be like a pair in the nut diamond draw. Ace nine just not going to bet here at the end. Like if you put yourself in a, I know you didn't say that, caller, but I'm just giving an example. Like ace nine of diamonds is going to be very, very happy to check back here. So really you're left with like sets, but here's the thing, and I'm talking about the value on portion. I can't buy that. If you saw that the guy had, let's say that you're there at the end, Kevin, and I know it's not absolute because you're also doing it partially because you're thinking you're inducing a bluff, but if you could somehow see the guy's cards and he's got pocket fives or pocket nines, wouldn't you agree with me that, especially in Texas, the most profitable line is to jam as opposed to check call? I'm saying like if let me rephrase that, like most, like a jam is going to get called here more often than, or it's going to be more profitable to jam and get called than to check and expect a set to bet all in. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
So you have the other portion, which is the bluffs. So you've got that where we think it's more profitable to jam because I don't think a set's folding. Because the definition of value owning, of course, as I told Michael, was you need to have a situation where the opponent would fold to a bet, but when you check, he actually value owns himself. Very rare. I don't think it's in this case. Bluffing, inducing a bluff, I just feel like you've shown so much strength here that really, like, what is the ace is not really a bad card for you, because at a minimum, what is your minimum bet three bet range on the flop?
It's either kings or aces, maybe ace king.
Right. So the ace is always not going to be a bad card for you, right?
But I meant more it was bad in the sense where it could kill my action if he does have, a hand like fives or nines. And I think like this is a pretty good player that he thinks a lot. I think he could fold a set here. But I've also seen him run bluffs where he thinks, because he's covering me in this situation, he thinks he could get me to fold a better hand than what he's holding.
Well, I mean, I think that the bare minimum that you have here is ace king, and I even doubt that. Now, it's interesting that like now what you had said, you're defining value own. And yeah, there are certain situations where you could make the case where if you were to jam, somebody might fold like fives. But if you checked, they might bet thinking you've got like ace king. But I would still go back to the flop though, if I were your opponent, and think, what is this guy bet three betting me with here on the flop? Because if it's pocket kings or pocket aces, those are sets. So if I got here with pocket fives or nines at the end and this guy's checking, do I really think he's three betting ace king on the flop and then he's checking to check call with specifically ace king? So I think it's a lot closer where if I was your opponent, I very well might even consider checking back with a set here for those reasons. It all has to do with the flop play. So
Yeah.
in general, if I were you, I'm just taking the value line and going for it at the end. So I would not have checked. So I mean, that's my take. So you checked, okay?
Yeah, I checked, and probably after about 10 seconds, he jammed.
Well, I mean, then obviously you have to call, right? Because I mean, especially when we think that Jack 10 is going to be doing. We just said that even though on the surface it looks like, oh, backdoor spades, really the only logical hand that he could really even have here is King Jack of spades, if that's even raised off, right? So if he has some Jack 10 here that was slow played, you can never fold. You know what I'm saying? I think the more interesting part here is whether or not, the river play here and also sizing up here too. So he jams for like 2,000. So it's like 5,000, 2,000 for you to call. I just I can't really ever see him folding. Now, somehow if you had played ace king this way, would there be a difference? The difference would be if he was possibly jamming a set. But of course, you beat that with kings. So you have to call, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was kind of my thought. I took maybe like 10 seconds and just kind of shrugged and was like, well, if you got it, Jack 10 was the only thing I was really thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
And I did put in the chips, yeah.
Okay. And reveal?
He had a King 8 of spades.
King 8 of spades. Well, the other thing that I was going to say is you said that he was a good player. So I immediately thought of, normal hands that somebody would defend with to a three bet. Although you guys are deep, so he flatted 25 with a limper in there with King 8, and then you sort of made it kind of on the smaller side. So, I mean, there's no ante in the game, so it is definitely wide, but King X of spades, I don't know why it's necessarily raising the flop. It doesn't really need a whole lot of protection, but that is a hand that maybe we didn't look at just because sometimes you'll see like King 9 called down towards it. And again, even King X of spades, though, how often are those hands raising on the flop? But I don't think you did anything wrong. I just think that it's interesting, the river play and obviously, the sizing up until that point.
Yeah. And the reason why I sent this hand in mostly is because I know you like to talk about how it's sometimes hard to see the backdoor flush when you specifically have top set
Right.
because what else is calling you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
You're getting value from so little sometimes.
Right.
And I just think like, yeah, in this spot, I have to be good 1 out of 3 times to, really be profitable. I think I just kind of had to call in the spot just in case it was a set or like ace queen of diamonds kind of is something I was like running back the hand and looking at. Maybe that
I think
would play this way, but I still don't think.
I think ace queen of diamonds from your opponent's perspective, given the line that you took, would be absolutely burning money. That would be a terrible, terrible value bet at the end. Way too thin. And I'm all for like value betting, but you got to go back to what your action was, which was the bet three bet on the flop. I mean, ace queen is beating what? King jack? You know what I mean? And are you calling down the king jack when the ace comes at the end? It's just way too thin. I mean, I guess maybe you'd have the nut flush draw once in a while, like ace jack of diamonds. But we just said it was for him to have ace. He'd have to have ace queen of diamonds, so you can't really have it. But it's an interesting spot. I appreciate the call. Thanks for submitting.